Lucy the elephant was pregnant during her second term, but this time the birth was long and difficult. After many hours of pain and tears, when she finally gave birth, the park staff lowered their heads to look at the newborn. But when they saw the baby, they couldn't suppress their gasp of amazement. When the staff of the Amboseli National Park in Kenya noticed that their resident elephant Lucy was showing signs of imminent labor, they immediately called a veterinarian to help with the birth. This wasn't Lucy's first baby, as she had given birth 2 years earlier. Her first pregnancy had almost surprised the staff, as she had gone through it well and rarely showed signs of stress or discomfort. This time, however, they could detect the pregnancy early. Lucy seemed quite heavy and even a bit clumsy. It almost felt like she wasn't comfortable in her own skin, and the pregnancy seemed to be weighing on her more than usual. Since she was clearly not feeling well, the caretakers decided to observe her more closely and were therefore more than ready when Lucy began pacing back and forth and trumpeting in her own way. But it seemed this birth would be much more difficult than the previous one. Lucy suffered for hours under unbearable pain, continuously crying out to her herd and the staff as if begging for help. None of the measures seemed to calm her down. She moved back and forth, rubbing against some trees, doing everything she could. The contractions were progressing very slowly, which made the situation even more difficult for her. Her screams echoed through the thicket and were reflected by the nearby cliff ridges. Predators and curious animals approached to see what was happening, wondering if they could find an easy prey. Fortunately, Lucy had her herd around her, forming a protective barrier. They seemed very concerned about her and focused on driving away unwanted guests. The park staff continued waiting, hoping Lucy would survive this terrible experience. The on-duty veterinarian observed her and was ready to intervene when Lucy suddenly froze completely. After a few minutes of concern, a ranger approached to check if Lucy had given birth, but he saw something completely unexpected. He quickly called everyone else and shouted in amazement. Lucy had given birth to twins, an almost unthinkable event. It was so rare that it had barely been documented. In fact, the last recorded case was in 1980. Now it became clear why Lucy had looked so large during pregnancy. She was carrying 2 elephant babies instead of 1. After the initial shock and excitement about the twins, the park staff became seriously concerned. Having twins in the wild is rare for good reasons. Mammals like elephants are not designed to raise more than 1 offspring, as the process itself is very exhausting. Normally, the weaker of the 2 young is left behind. Their fears intensified when they noticed the reaction of Lucy's oldest daughter to the twins. Unlike other elephants in the herd, she seemed quite annoyed by the arrival of her twin siblings. She showed absolutely no behavior of a caring older sister and looked at them with a deeply furrowed brow. The staff wanted to intervene but couldn't. Working in a national park meant letting life take its natural course, which meant they could only watch what would happen. Normally, older siblings in elephant families are very warm and hospitable towards the younger ones. But in this family, the situation seemed different. The older sister stomped her feet near her brothers and acted as if she wanted to charge at them. They were barely an hour old, but that didn't stop the older sister from showing the rest of the herd what she thought about the twins. Lucy was too exhausted to deal with her daughter, but fortunately, the herd stepped in. Elephant herds are closely connected and functional families, which meant Lucy could rely on the older members of her family to discipline her daughter. And exactly that happened under the attentive eyes of the park staff. One of the older females in the group gently pushed the young elephant girl away from the mother and brothers. She carefully stroked her with her trunk and gradually calmed her down. For the staff, this was a relief. They naturally didn't want any harm to come to the newborns, especially because their birth was of great significance to the entire elephant community. The sight of a newborn trying to get on its feet was touching as always. They swayed like drunk, unable to maintain balance. With Lucy, there seemed to be no difference between the twins, at least at first glance. The first twin stood up, looked strong and confident, took a few steps forward, and then fell on his bottom. But he was determined. Quickly he tried to get up again, falling once more. His powerful body made the staff speculate that he might become a mighty, dominant bull one day. The second twin, however, struggled much more. It was visibly difficult for him to lift himself up. Despite his efforts, he appeared weak, merely moving his head up and down while unsuccessfully trying to stand. After half an hour, he gave up exhausted. The staff watched worriedly as the second twin remained on the ground, completely worn out. Meanwhile, the first twin wandered around awkwardly like any healthy newborn. He ran crying to his mother and pressed his head against her. A touching gesture of a caring mother began to feed him. But while she was caring for him, she was worried about her second child. The clever elephant mother knew she had two newborns and needed to help the second one. When she saw him lying in the ground, she was visibly uneasy. She abruptly got up and went to him, pushing him with her trunk. Lucy began to make worried sounds. The herd noticed her behavior and began to gradually approach the situation. While they warmly welcomed the first twin and showed him physical affection, their tone changed when they reached the lethargic twin. Their calls became dark and sad. The herd followed Lucy silently, almost as a sign of solidarity, trying to comfort her through their presence. Another mother from the herd stepped forward, leaving her own young to help Lucy. They used their trunks to try to move the little elephant to stand, but he showed hardly any reaction. Lucy and the other elephant mother became increasingly worried as the young one couldn't get on its feet. They began stomping their feet, apparently unsure what to do. Lucy flapped her ears, a clear sign of her disappointment that did not go unnoticed. The herd felt her fear and shared it. For the park staff, it was terrible to watch this torment, but they could do nothing. It seemed the second twin would not survive, and the herds were beginning to consider his death inevitable. But before something terrible happened, the elephant baby seemed to understand the message. His mother and family were there to support him, no matter what. So he gathered all his strength and tried to stand up for the first time that day. He pushed and swung as hard as he could, and when his body finally left the ground, something amazing happened. When his mother wrapped her trunk around his body and held him up, it inspired the elephant baby so much that he could maintain his balance. When his mother finally let him go, thanks to her loving support, he managed to stand up and take his first steps. He didn't move as quickly as his brother, but he was moving. The atmosphere in the valley changed for the first time since the twins' birth. There were now signs that everything would be okay. The herd members raised their trunks in unison and released harmonious trumpet sounds to tell the entire valley that the newest and youngest members of the herd were doing well. The staff let the happy herd celebrate and return to their camp, inspired by what they had just witnessed. Back at the camp, they could hardly believe what they had heard. At first, they thought it was a joke, but when the staff showed blurry photos of the twin elephants, their colleagues couldn't help but be a bit envious of the experience. Without hesitation, an employee took a beautiful photo of the adorable twins and posted it on social media. He wanted the whole world to witness this miracle, the birth of twins and the close bond already developing between herd members and the young. From that moment, the photos went viral, far beyond their wildest dreams. The Amboseli National Park in Kenya was a place where foreigners traveled, especially when visiting Africa to see elephants. Actually, over 1,600 elephants lived there, and people from all over the world came with the sole purpose of seeing these majestic giants. Attention is normally positive for attractions like parks, but it can also have negative consequences, such as greedy hunters or poachers who might exploit such situations. Thanks to the viral images, poachers quickly recognized that two valuable little trophies with still unstable legs were wandering in the park. Poaching was a terrible problem they fought every day. In 2017 alone, they had lost 10 elephant babies to diseases and falls. The situation had become so severe that they had to hire more than 300 rangers and also ask the local community for help to protect the elephants. When they heard about the endangered twins, they decided to protect them, spending much time monitoring the newborn twins for security reasons and helping to monitor their well-being. The next day, the park veterinarian came to examine the second twin to ensure he was doing well and to reassure the park staff about his health. But it was no easy task to approach the little one. His entire family and herd surrounded him, ready to protect him from any stranger who might try to harm the elephant babies. The doctor observed the elephant baby from a distance and explained that he was okay and would soon improve. But as the elephant baby began to move, it became clear that his condition was worse than everyone had expected. The veterinarian had the terrible feeling that something bad might happen and prepared for a possible tragedy. He received permission from the Wildlife Commission and carefully approached the elephant baby. At the moment the veterinarian chose the best injection point, chaos broke out. The elephant baby was frightened when it saw people coming closer. It had never experienced them so close before, and the veterinarian with a huge needle was particularly intimidating. This examination of the elephant baby became a challenge. Despite his nervous and shy behavior, the little one seemed almost to enjoy the pursuit, which showed that he was neurologically intact and only needed physical support. When the veterinarian finally managed to approach the elephant baby, he administered the injection and then let it continue moving, knowing that physical activity would benefit the young one. Despite the initial concerns brought by the twins' birth, the older sister now truly played her role. She was happy that her mother showed her affection and that she now had two playmates. Thanks to the veterinarian's efforts and Lucy's care, the second elephant baby caught up with the herd and gained enough health to be independent. The park now had a pair of healthy twins, and many people had the opportunity to see them interacting naturally in their habitat. Everyone emerged as a winner from this situation. It was proof of the power of nature.